Hey everyone, it's Wednesday, April 26th, 2023, and that means you must be listening to the DMZ America podcast with me, Ted Rall, coming to you from the left.
And I'm me, Scott Stantis, coming to you from the right.
Scott, it's always good to see you, whether you're coming from the right, the left, or the middle.
Wherever the hell I'm coming from. I've got facial hair for those of you who will be watching this on the YouTubes. Our local hockey team is in the playoffs. And so I know the owner, and like an idiot, again, beer was involved. No, it wasn't this time because I'm not drinking much lately. I don't know what the hell got into me. Anyway, I'm growing a playoff beard. So here it is.
Cannabis?
No, I don't do that.
Hey, cannabis is not legal yet in Alabama, is it?
Oh, no. They always, that's the old joke. The time difference between here and New York is 10 years.
10. I would have said 100.
Well, I was being generous because I live here. Go Bulls. That's all I can say.
Okay.
That's all I'm going to say.
You
don't care. Ted, it's my favorite conversations in the world are having sports conversations with Ted.
Well, short. It's a short conversation.
It really is. Going to say, so what do you think of the Super Bowl matchup? He's go, the what?
I'll be like, good for you. Have a good one. I hope everything works out in your favor.
It's the one area where Ted and I just really have nothing to talk about. So there will never be sports talk on the DMZ America podcast.
Well, there would be probably like about the economics of sports, for example. I've always thought that it's the controversies over whether some players are overpaid are really interesting because it's still, from a Marxist perspective, possible to look at a dude who gets $15 million a year for chasing a ball and say that guy's not paid enough. He's still an exploited worker compared to his employer. That's an interesting topic. Also the question of whether municipalities, why did we suddenly start as taxpayers paying for sports arenas when, 100 years ago, Mr. Wrigley, he thought he could pay for his own field, no problem. It never even occurred to him to shake down the local taxpayers for a little help.
You can actually blame my father for this, in part.
Fuck you, Scott's father.
George Stantis. Back in the 60s, my dad was part of a group that formed to push a bond issue through the city of San Diego to build San Diego's stadium for the new AFL team, the San Diego Chargers. And also then in 1969, the San Diego Padres started playing there as well. Murphy was one of them. He was a columnist for the newspaper. The mayor at the time, who ended up going to jail, was also part of this group. But there are 5 of them, and I can't remember his first name all of a sudden. But Murphy died. He was one of the first of the group who died not in prison, and so they renamed the stadium for him. And I always kind of berated my father for not having died before Mr. Murphy. So it could have been George Stantis Stadium. So they would have called it like the George or the Stan, which would have been awesome.
That would have been.
But no, Dad had to live. Son of a bitch. Anyway, so yeah, my dad. But that's what's
family issues are coming out here.
Coming out here on the DMZ America podcast.
Yeah.
No, but my dad was part of this, and that's kind of started the whole movement for municipalities to build these palaces for these teams. And what was curious was that back then the NFL wasn't making the kind of money it makes now. The Washington football team just sold last week for $6 billion. Let them build their own fucking stadium.
I'm sure they could.
Dallas Jones, the Cowboys, they built their own stadium. And it was this remarkable, huge thing. Had the biggest jumbotron in the history of humanity and all this other stuff. Now you've got the stadium in Los Angeles that houses both the Rams and the Chargers.
The Staples Center.
No, that's the arena. This is the Los Angeles stadium, and it's amazing. I mean, it's remarkable, but it's paid for by the guy who owns the damn Rams.
Well, and that is as it should be.
Yes. Okay. Sorry, you touched a nerve. Because why you touched the nerve, and then I'll let this go is Chicago, where of course I'm the cartoonist for the Chicago Tribune. The Bears are moving to Arlington Heights, to a suburb way the hell out there. which is crazy, but they're doing it, and they're leaving Soldier Field, and they're trying to, the legislature's trying every which way they can to try to give money to pay for this move by the Chicago Bears, which will be the Arlington Heights Bears, actually. Um, so are the people of Arlington Heights going to have to pay some money? They're talking about taxing them. They're talking about some kind of hotel tax to pay off the lease for Soldier Field. I mean, it's all bullshit. This should not a single penny of taxpayer money should go to this. Period.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's funny. I have talked about this with sports fans, non-sports fans, Democrats, Republicans. I've never met anyone who said, it's really important for the taxpayers to subsidize the 27 jobs that will be provided in some godforsaken part of the outskirts of a city. Because that's where they are, right? They have to be, because with the exception of something like Fenway, these cities where the city kind of grew around it, there's not going to be, they have to be outside because they're big. And like, for example, when the Yankees they built the new Yankee Stadium. I don't know if they got any help from the taxpayers, but they wanted it. And some study came out that showed that that section of the Bronx literally could count on 150 extra jobs as a result of that stadium, because basically the area is desolate and abandoned, and there's no commercial activity except for a few bars immediately before and after games, and that's it.
Well, and I'm sure the jobs, many of which are security guard,
Right.
people who clean up the
jobs.
Yeah, these are not,
programs. Can't tell the players without a program.
You can't live in the Bronx on the salary they pay at the Yankees game, I'm sure. So yeah, no, it's all, and they've also found that the economic impact of stadiums is negligible at best.
Yes,
now
that's what I'm trying to get at.
And that's the line we were fed back in the day when they had these bond issues, which were passing left and right. And that was,
so
it was
what's obviously
bullshit.
happening, Scott, is that, mayors and city councilmen go out for way too many martinis with athletes who are tagging along with, the presidents of these sports teams. And it's like, hey, you scratch my back, I'll scratch your campaign's back. It's corruption, pure and simple.
Yeah.
It has to be.
Oh yeah.
It's not a civic interest here. Anyway, all right. Well, we should talk about not something that's not in the news, and probably talk about the news of the week, which was, of course, yesterday's video announcement by President Joe Biden that he's running for reelection this coming next year. And there's a lot to unpack. I don't even know where to start here.
Well, let's start with the video itself, which was just, it was shitty. It was just like, these quick cut of, Biden and then people, different people of color.
Freedom.
Yeah. And buzzwords like freedom, coinage, tap dancing. Yes. It was, and then he literally says, let's go. That's the only thing he says
which is a very unfortunate choice of phrase, considering let's go, Brandon.
Not just that, but he's also seems kind of tottering when he says that
in a recorded message. Let's not forget that. I mean, they could have gotten him to say this 27 times. This was his best take, and he still sounded like he had marbles in his mouth the entire time. You don't see much Joe Biden. You see images of January 6th. The emphasis seems to be, we're here to fight the MAGA Republicans. We're preserving democracy. We're defending democracy, and we will defend abortion rights. Although he never says the word abortion or reproductive choice or any synonym for that. But you see, abortion is healthcare signs not once but twice being held aloft by protesters. So obviously he's signaling that the Democrats are going to make hay out of the abortion issue. And, what was really missing is two words, you and Crane. They were not at all here. That's been arguably the centerpiece of this president's foreign policy. And it's not mentioned either in the video or in the audio.
Yeah. Well, I think the Republicans, and not just the Republicans, there's a Democrat, RFK Jr., who's running saying that we should not be supporting this war. The proxy wars are dumb, they're expensive, and they don't do what you think they're going to do. And
Yeah, Marianne Williamson, I think, it does support the effort to arm Ukraine, though.
Is that right?
Yeah, I think so, which is why I would not vote for her.
Well, anyway, so the video was kind of crap. His appearance, he makes a very small. And the other thing, Ted, and am I going to sound like an old fart? You tell me, because I mean, but announcements for either election or reelection, I'm Ted Rall, I'm running for president of the United States, and the crowd goes nuts, right? I mean, you kick it off in front of your partisans, you do it in front of a crowd. It's the excitement and the
or you come down your brass gilt elevator in your own building.
He still did that in front of a crowd, and in fact, this time around, he did the same thing. It was very low key, though. It was in the ballroom at Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, he was feeling a little beleaguered at that time. It's so funny. What a difference an indictment makes.
What a difference.
So yeah. So this race, we're partying like it's 1892, clearly, right? I mean, we're headed towards a rematch in the same way that Grover Cleveland, Benjamin Harrison ran against each other in 1888. It's a rematch. In this case, Trump is looking to pull off a Grover Cleveland and be returned to office. He would be the second president in American history to return to office after having been turned out on his ear. And it's, I think, gonna be like, I think it's gonna have a dampening effect on the interest of the voters. I just do. I mean, it's like, sure, the passions are still there, but I can't imagine you're going to have the same record turnout that you did last time. I mean, of course, last time the turnout was not just from the interest, it was during the pandemic, and they made voting by mail much easier. So there were more votes than ever. I think 70, if memory serves, I think it was 79 million for Biden, 75 million for Trump. Trump's 75 is the second highest number that any candidate has ever received. So, I mean, Biden, let's unpack a few things. First of all, there's been renewed calls for him to have to take a cognitive test.
Yes.
I looked this up. There are 2 states and the District of Columbia that require drivers over the age of 75, even with a clean record, to take a new road test to prove that they can still drive. So apparently in 2 states of the union, Illinois being one of them, if you are 75 years old, they're not sure they can trust you to drive a car. But in the District of Columbia, where Joe Biden lives, they will not trust him to drive a car, but they will trust him to drive nuclear launch codes.
Yeah.
Which seem a little more dangerous than a car.
Yeah, un peu. I couldn't agree with you more on that. I mean, you and I have talked about it before, and I think the same is true of the party candidates. I mean, I think, well, not just the major parties, the Libertarian Party candidate and the Green Party candidate should take it too. I want to know if they have their marbles together. I mean, but in this case, you see every time I see President Biden now, he just seems worse and worse and more doddering. He looks at people, and we're dealing with a family member now who's, combating dementia. And he just has that look on his face. You know how, Ted, your mom had to battle that, and she looked at you, you looked at her, she looked at you, or she looked at some point, looked at other people, and they had that look on their face, like it's a smile, but it's also no recognition. Joe Biden has that now. If you look at him when he's at events, and this is going to piss off people, and it's not because he's a Democrat. I wouldn't care if he was a Republican or a Libertarian or an independent. I really wouldn't.
I would say the same thing if it was about Bernie Sanders and he were the president. Joe Biden, just seems to be more and more, and we're going to reelect this. Now, I mean, he's running against. Well, we might reelect him.
That's another thing to unpack.
He's at 39% in the polls, 37% in another poll. Those are numbers equivalent to where Donald Trump was at this point, and he lost.
Well, head to head, you're going to have, interesting polling that's already started, as Ted pointed out. You have Joe Biden having wide support, but it's an inch deep.
Very, very shallow.
You have Trump, who is an inch wide, but it's a mile deep. I mean, these people are going to vote. MAGA
No matter
Nation.
what.
Yes, no matter what, they're going to vote. So you heard a theory, which I kind of poo-pooed, and maybe I tend to poo-poo things a little too soon, but talking about whether or not this is an actual announcement or not, or is it a place setter? Go ahead.
Yeah, Rena Shah, who's our fellow Center Clip contributor on the Center Clip app, posited she takes kind of like about a minute to get to it. So you have to sort of, if anyone can listen to it, even if you don't subscribe to Center Clip. But then she finally gets into it, and it's fascinating. And she basically wonders aloud whether Biden's really not running, and that this is really just a placeholder announcement. His desire is not really necessarily to run for reelection, because maybe he and Jill know that he can't handle the job. Let's not forget the fact that he'd be 82 if he won. He'd be 86 when he leaves office. Almost never, no one else in the history of the United States has ever been 86 on the president of the United States. The oldest we've ever had was 78. And Reagan was not all there when he was 78. That was after 8 years in office. And so there's been very few leaders, even if you look at monarchs historically, who were 86 years old when they were the head of state. He would be, it would just be kind of a shocking development. And but anyway, so Rena says, look, he's not really running. What this is about is he pretends to run, and then this fall, October, November, he withdraws and then passes the torch to his anointed successor, Kamala Harris, Cheryl Hines, Clovis, who knows, Scott Stantis. But anyway, the point is,
if nominated, I will not run. If elected, I will not serve.
So that's like, I think that's like, I think there's something to that. Biden, he wants to take it with him. He wants to decide. If he can't be the prez, he wants to choose the prez. I mean, it really seems like he's trying to game this. He gamed the last election with this James Clyburn brokered Amy Klobuchar, Pete Buttigieg, what's his name, Beto O'Rourke, multiple in mass endorsement that he pulled off right as they were heading into Super Tuesday in the Deep South. Biden likes to enter contests where the fix is in. And even though he might know that he needs to be the transitional one-term president that he promised to be, he might not be, that might be where he is. I don't know. I think it's something that we should linger on and think about as a possibility. And by the way, if so, I think it's disgusting. I mean, it would mark a new low for American politics. I mean, there's never a floor, man. There's always something worse.
No, there never is. I just don't. And here's the reason why. When Ted mentioned this earlier, we were just talking on the phone, because he's not trotting anyone out right now. There's no one who's like, Biden's best buddy, and that's the way you would probably trot this out, is he would be seen with Kamala Harris. Although Kamala Harris,
you would do it later. You would not do it now, because it would then you'd blow the whole thing. If I were orchestrating it, I would be like, full speed ahead. You just be president. You announce that the president will not be campaigning because he puts the duties of the presidency and the needs of the American people ahead of his own personal campaign. Everybody buys that, because really the campaign doesn't begin on the Republican side until August, when the first debate occurs. Democrats don't start focusing until after Labor Day. Nothing really gets serious till October. Then around October, Biden comes out and says, after careful consideration, I think I had a health setback over the summer. I've really got to, spend more time with my great grandchildren. So I'm going to, I'm bowing out and I'm giving it all to Clovis.
Well, Clovis would be a hell of a choice.
He'd be the best looking president we've ever had.
No doubt. No doubt. Okay. I mean, that would be, historic. That nothing like that has ever happened in our politics.
Bait and
Um,
switch president.
yeah, no, that would be pretty
It's not an
remarkable.
impossibility, right? You're not
No, no,
laughing at
no,
me, or Arena. You're not saying like, oh, she's fucking crazy. No fucking way. You can't say that.
no, no, because well, and you're right, there is no floor. And in the last since 2016, uh, politics is not what it used to be. And so I had, you and I both have this old paradigm, and I especially have it because that's how I was raised. I mean, and how I became involved in politics was dealing with this type of stuff. And not all of that seems null and void now. Anything could happen. So that could happen
Yeah.
conceivably. I really think he likes being president. I mean, for the hour a day that he remembers, I think he loves it.
Yeah,
Um,
no, I'm
but
sure
here's
it's
the other
nice.
thing that can play to you, and this actually dovetails into this conversation, is a couple of news outlets today are saying that it looks like the Biden campaign is going to run the same campaign it ran in 2020.
Well, we could
Uh,
tell that from the video, right? I mean, it's
well, even
literally
more
the
so
main
because
the
they
main
have,
point is we're not Donald Trump. We're protecting
yeah,
your right to vote, which I continue to maintain is incredibly self-serving, because look, Republicans are engaged in voter suppression. Republicans are trying to get you to not figure out ways to keep Democrats from voting. No question about that. Democrats are like, we will fight for your right to vote for us. They will not fight for your right to vote for a non-DNC endorsed, non-corporatist Democrat in the primaries. Those people they kneecap, like Bernie Sanders or Howard Dean. Then they will not fight for your right to vote for a third party like the Greens, because those people they take to court to keep them off the ballot. They will not fight for your right to vote for some unknown third party generically, because those people they collude with the Republicans to keep out of the presidential debates, so that we only have two choices no matter what. So it's self-serving. We Democrats will fight for your right not to party, but to vote for us. And that's why I don't think it's going to take that message is going to take the world by storm. I don't
well,
think so.
they have J6 now, and that's a powerful image, and it's very powerful for a lot of Americans who were disgusted by what happened that day, and the fact that the guy who looks like it's definitely going to be looks like, no, it's not looks like, it's definitely will be the nominee for the Republicans is Donald Trump, who instigated it. And so that's a powerful argument, and that's where I think
Do
they
you really
win.
think so, though? I mean,
Yeah,
do you think
yeah,
it moves the needle? I mean, I
yes.
wonder if, especially when it comes to Donald Trump, is there anyone who through everything, and everything is capital E, Gothic lettering, drop shadow, lasers,
Yes.
everything. Through everything, there's people who are like, I was with him through the COVID denial stuff. I was with him through kids in cages. I was with him through trying to provoke a coup d'etat against the country. I was with him with making fun of the disabled New York Times reporter at his rally. I was with him through all that. But this one thing, January 6th, is a
No,
bridge too far.
no. It doesn't change those minds, but those minds
Okay.
are 25% max of the population.
35. Okay. But
I don't think it's that high. I really don't. Regardless, it's not a majority by a long shot. And I think the people now, does that energize people to vote? I think it does, Ted. I think that those images, for me, for people who like me, who were just aghast.
to
Um,
vote for Joe Biden, if
yeah,
that's what we're talking, you're not going to vote for Joe Biden. You're going to vote for the libertarian.
well, yeah, that's true. Probably. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Because I mean, look at this. I mean, I live in Illinois. I lived in Illinois. I live in Alabama. My vote doesn't count either way. I mean, it
Right.
really doesn't.
That's true.
Illinois is going to go Democratic. Alabama is going to go Republican. Nothing is going to change that. So it actually frees me up to vote my conscience, and I can vote for the candidates who I actually want to
Yeah.
vote
Same
for.
thing for me in New York.
Yeah, I guess.
New York will vote for Biden. No question about that.
Yeah. So I don't know if the Green Party has their candidate yet or not. I doubt it.
Well, what about abortion? I mean, I do think the Democrats are right. I think they're overstating it. I think they think it's a primary issue. I don't. I think it's a secondary issue. I think it's a strong secondary issue. What Democrats are not talking about in the video and are not talking about in the article that you mentioned is the economy. And I think it's a curious thing. I mean, they obviously are like, la, 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 la. If we talk about the economy, then we'll have to talk about inflation. But maybe what they should do is get out in front of it, which is always what you should do in politics. What they should say is, look, inflation's an issue, but the reason there's inflation is because this president had the foresight to say, keep us out of a depression by flooding the economy with trillions of dollars in COVID aid. And so we had to, it was, one of those things like, we had to save the patient, and better that the patient be a little sick than like looking pretty and dead. If you lose your job, you've lost 100% of your earning power. If inflation is 10% a year, you've lost 10% of your earning power. That's, 10% is better than 100% in this scenario. They should say that. They should brag about it. To me, it's like an unforced error. It's the same thing. It's analogous to how Trump ran away from Operation Warp Speed, which you and I both know President Hillary Clinton would never have gone for. She would have been far more cautious. She would have said the FDA has to test this vaccine over and over and over until everyone has died of COVID. Trump took a chance, rolled the dice in a way that only sort of a wild man and a Republican would be able to do politically. And, it came up two double sixes. And he, if he had talked about that, not run away from it, he would have been reelected handily.
So, yeah, I think, but he wanted to, I think he was calculating that he wanted the anti-vaxxers in his corner. And if he'd come out,
it was a base strategy. He's always had a base. He's had a solid base strategy. This is going to be another clash of a solid Republican base strategy versus a traditional Democrat try to get the swing voters pivot to the center strategy.
Yeah, no, so going forward, I mean, there's so much to unpack here.
There's a lot.
Yeah, there really is. The Biden campaign, like I said, it's going to go with a Rose Garden strategy, which doesn't work, by the way, because it was used in 1980. How'd that work out for Jimmy Carter? Wait.
And Jimmy Carter at least had an excuse. I imagine that he was on the phone with the Ayatollah every night trying to get the hostages out. What's Joe Biden going to say? I mean, he's got nothing going on. He's got the Republicans are in charge of the House. So therefore, let's face it, there's no legislative agenda to speak of. And here's the problem. Joe Biden has to erase the memory of the Delaware basement COVID 2020 campaign. That's in everyone's mind. Like, it's kind of like that was a oneer. The Republicans always said he can't campaign because he's too old and doddering. He's got to kill that. He's got to drive a stake through that. He's got to be out on the campaign trail like a beast.
He can't do it, Ted. I agree with you 1000%. The idea of him just sort of like having this, I'm going to have one campaign event every 3 days, and that's cool. People like that. No, they won't, because that Donald Trump's going to be out there, and his strongest campaign tool was having those rallies, right? I mean, and having 2-3 of them a day, and they were packed with tens of thousands of people. It just, even if those were the only people who were ever going to go to those rallies, it still conjured up ideas that this campaign was on fire and was going to steamroll over this. Obviously, COVID put the kibosh on that. You mentioned the economy, and that's why I wanted to come back to real quickly. If I'm the Biden campaign, I don't adhere to that. I think getting ahead of it makes sense. But the problem is, Ted, they don't know what's coming up. The numbers this week are really weird. The jobless insurance claims went up. The number of jobs created were below estimates. And of course, the Federal Reserve is going to fuck things up even more and say, oh, well, look, we got this.
The Fed is officially predicting recession sometime this fall. That is bad news for Biden and the Democrats.
Oh, it's huge.
They're heading into a presidential election with the beginning of a recession. That's bad.
Yes. And the thing is that's bad is that if you don't have a guy who's out there if you don't have a guy doing what Ted Rall is telling Joe Biden to do, which is you have to be the happy warrior. You have to be FDR. You have to say, listen, I know things are bad. This is all part and parcel of coming out of a pandemic. We're still paying the price for those years, but by gum, we're in this together, and we're going to fight it. We're going to make this as shallow a recession as we possibly can. Stuff. I mean, that's not the verbiage. You do it differently, but you see where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
But he can't do it, Ted. Joe Biden doesn't have the energy or the acumen at this stage of his life to do any of those things that we just suggested.
No, I agree. I mean, he obviously doesn't. Look, he literally he could not enunciate the word freedom in his video. And
how did he say it?
He was like, freedom, like freedom. Like it was like an effort. I mean, it's like the words of a dying man. I mean, and look, Joe Biden has good days, or he has better days. We've seen them. When he gave that State of the Union address, when he got feisty with the Republicans and he was trolling them about Medicare and Social Security, that was impressive.
Yeah.
But old people have good days, and Joe Biden is physically in good shape. He's trim. I wouldn't be surprised if he lived another. I don't think he's going to drop dead. I wouldn't be surprised if he lived another 10 or 15 years, really. Look, Jimmy Carter is 99 years old. He was supposed to die like 6 months ago. He's still with us. But I don't, the issue is mental. The issue is energy. Also, speaking of unpacking, another thing besides Ukraine that was missing from the video was promises for the future. If reelected, I would do blah, blah, blah. He said, you've got to let me finish the job.
Yeah, what does that mean?
Dude, we elected you to do a job 4 years ago. So you didn't do it? Well, now you want more time? Then if you want more time, like you go to your professor in college and say, I need an extension, then you've got to be able to say, professor, my homework was eaten by an armadillo, and so I need more time. and like, it's like, here's a picture of the armadillo. Here's a picture of my homework sticking out of his asshole. I mean, it's like, why do you want more time? What was the job? I mean, basically his only job was to not be Donald Trump, which I guess
exactly
he has succeeded.
Yes.
But he wants to finish that job, I guess, again. But where's the promises? I mean, first of all, I guess he couldn't make a credible promise, because if he doesn't have a Democratic House and Senate, he can't get anything done. We know that the Republicans are obstructionists.
Right.
So, and I'm not, by the way, I don't think that they're really wrong to be obstructionists. I wish
that's their job.
I wish Democrats were obstructionists when Republicans are in charge. But but there's no promises. Like, I'm sorry, a political campaign, it's really like 101, right? It's like, if you vote for me, I will do this and that for you to make your lives and the lives of people you care about better.
Right.
Where are the promises? I mean, last time he told us that he was going to give us a $15 an hour minimum wage. Now that shit has dragged on so fucking long. It needs to be 20 or 25. And then the student loan forgiveness thing, which was important to Gen Z and the millennials, that turned out to just be a half-hearted, bullshit thing. The abortion thing's ridiculous. They could have gone to the mat for abortion when they had the chance. They never did.
Well, I was just thinking the other day, why didn't they codify it when it went to when the Supreme Court said, we're going to hear it, and you had a Supreme Court, the makeup of which you knew what they were. The Democrats controlled the House and Senate. Then they could have codified it.
Yeah, they could have gotten a few Republicans to go along. And if they couldn't, they would have gotten at least a vote, an up or down vote, where they would have been able to get Republicans on the record. And then they would have had attack ads and been like, Senator John Johnson hates women. He voted against codifying Roe v. Wade, blah, blah, blah. Americans for women who are awesome.
I want to just backtrack super fast to reproductive rights and the fight against the abortion pill. I think that's really starting to, that's a bridge too far for people, which is weird, but there it is. Because these asshole Republicans have said that they're going to go after birth control. And they're going to go after birth control because it makes sluts of our daughters, I guess. I mean, that's the only...
Yes, no, that's right. Republicans have really, that's going to say, I mean, I've been talking a lot, and I tend to emphasize as a lefty the weaknesses of the Democratic Party, but this is where Republicans are in trouble. I mean, they went too far. I think I read a fascinating article shortly after the Dobbs decision where they were interviewing people, I think in Alabama or Mississippi, right-wing conservatives who said, I'm pro-life, I'm a born-again Christian, I'm opposed to this, and yet this makes me uncomfortable. I really don't like the idea that the government is in charge of this. I think the real bedrock anti-abortion sentiment in this country, even among conservatives, is really that they mostly wish women would choose not to get
Sure.
abortions.
Oh, that's absolutely true.
They don't really want the government to do this. And it makes and I mean, also, I got to say, cases like the 5 Texas women who filed suit in federal court against Texas's, abortion ban, that was some compelling shit. There's one of these women, she obviously is not like, a slut who got knocked up or, had a fuck up because the condom broke. She paid for in vitro fertilization. She and her husband paid tens of thousands of dollars, and she endured hundreds of shots of hormones. She wanted that baby, but the baby was going to kill her. They had to take it out in order to try. And she almost died because, as we've talked about here on the podcast in the past, Texas's abortion ban, the exceptions for the life of the mother, are written like shit, and the doctors are scared to go in and save the mom until she's coding. So, I mean, to me, that's brutal. I mean, I don't see how the average pro-life American looks at that woman and thinks, fuck her, she's an asshole, she deserves to die.
Right. Well, okay. I think we got a lot of that out.
All right, well, let's handicap this fucker. Biden versus Trump. We agreed that they'll be the most likely nominees. I say current advantage, Donald Trump.
Ooh, yeah. Well, no, I'm going to say Biden, which is weird. Oh, God,
why?
Because the reproductive rights and the January 6th and the fact that it's Donald fucking Trump. I think. All right,
I'm going to say advantage Trump, because 70% of Democratic voters are progressives, and they don't like Joe Biden, and they won't vote against him. They just won't bother to vote. And also, Joe Biden is currently only ahead of Trump in matching point polls by a couple of percentage points.
Yeah.
And Republicans always close the gap, and it's always the Republicans pick up as the race goes on. Always, always, always.
I will also throw in a subcategory, sub bet here. God, when we get together, we're going to have like 38 beers to settle these.
It's going to be a problem.
Not really.
No.
But let me ask you this, Ted, and then we'll tie things up. RFK Jr., the son of Robert Kennedy, is running in the primary. He's already pulling 15%. He's a progressive candidate.
Mm-hmm. Well, he is. Yeah, he's pretty progressive. Yeah.
I mean, he's got the vax thing, and I think his caution on that was commendable. I mean, it wasn't irrational. He's being painted as irrational.
He was not an anti-vaxxer.
No. Okay. But he's running the primary. So there's going to be primaries. 15% means there's got to be debates. Although Biden
assuming he maintains that, right? Isn't the threshold 5%?
I thought, well, for the general election it was 15, because remember Gary
Johnson.
Although
Biden's currently saying that he doesn't want to debate. The Democrats say they don't want to hold any debates, and that Biden does not want to debate. But of course,
I can't blame him. I mean, would you? I mean, I like cheese. Would be, his answer to every question. But RFK could potentially, I don't know. I don't know anything about the guy. I've never seen him on the stump. If he's any good, if he's as good as his dad, then oh boy, because his dad was amazing.
No, he's not as good as his dad.
But let's assume for a moment that he's at least good enough, and he starts getting Bernie type traction. Does he have is there any way that you see an RFK type candidate, and let's say it's RFK, a progressive candidate?
Ignore RFK Jr. I mean, that name, Jesus fucking Christ, and it's got the most currency of any name in American politics. And also, let's not forget this. When I interviewed Bernie Sanders for my book, this was June 2015. I went to townhouse I went to Bill Press's townhouse in DC to do this. He was at 1 to 2% in the poll, and that was 2 months from now, effectively in the cycle, 1 to 2%. He almost took it away from Hillary, and if the DNC hadn't interfered, he might have. And no matter how you look at it, he came damn close. He basically owned about 45% of Democratic primary votes. So if you start out of the gate at 15% and you haven't fucking done shit, you haven't made a single public appearance, and let's not ignore Marianne Williamson either. She has millions of followers.
Yeah.
She's a very interesting person, a fun candidate, very easy to listen to, has a very different message. I could really see a progressive dream team, RFK as president, Marianne Williamson as vice president.
Wow. Yeah, but the Democratic Party will crush it.
So you're asking me, can someone take it away from Biden? Yes, they can. I have never seen a weaker incumbent president in my lifetime.
Yeah.
He makes Jimmy Carter seem robust and powerful at this stage. Physically, temperamentally, he just doesn't have the energy, the vigor. Look, we all know he's too fucking old to make this run. So his safest bet is to pull the Rena Shaw option and just choose his anointed successor. I think it could be taken away from him. Student of presidential history. I mean, has a incumbent president ever have they ever lost the nomination for their?
Yes, the president who was ascended to the presidency on the death of the vice president who came up. John Tyler was probably the first. Was not renominated. You didn't have Andrew Johnson.
Oh, Jerry Ford.
Well, he was renominated.
Yeah, he was renominated. That's right.
I'm trying to think of some others, but it's always no sitting president has ever been denied the nomination that he wanted.
Yeah.
So that's where that is. Okay.
All right, then. All right. So when we come back, stay tuned. We'll come back and what will we be talking about?
We'll talk about the dream team of Tucker Carlson and Don Lemon.
Carlson, Lemon, Clovis. Stay with us.